the most memorable images of the Gospels, captured in one of the most memorable quotes, is that of a very tired, very human Jesus, worn out, perhaps even a bit burnt out, after a long day of teaching, preaching, and helping others. His colleagues were trying to protect him, so they turned away this one final last group, seeking an audience with him, a group of little children. But Jesus had other plans, and he directed his handlers to suffer the little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. He knew their importance, and we do in our day and our time here in our community. We know that children represent the future, our future, the future engineers creating new technologies, doctors discovering cures, scientists unlocking mysteries, artists, writers, architects, all helping to build a beautiful and hopefully peaceful and prosperous new world. Yet today, also in our time, at our own border, we had a very different reaction to the group of children who were coming to us for help, for healing, for our blessing. We did not say, as Jesus said, suffer the little children to come unto me. But rather, when they came, our government said, let the little children suffer. We recall the searing images of kids in cages, children of tender years taken from their mother's arms, families intentionally separated as a punishment for exercising a legal right to request asylum, safety in the United States. While those visceral images fade, we must remember that family separation takes many forms and happens every day in our community to our neighbors. Every day, moms and dads of US citizen children face deportation in our immigration courts, most without the benefit of legal representation. And though federal courts have slowed attempts to end programs for numerous immigrant groups such as DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, and for temporary protected status, which provides safety currently to over 1 million of our neighbors here in the United States, many in South Florida. Collectively, these individuals in those various programs have 500,000 US citizen children, and they will face deportation if these programs end. So daily, even during the pandemic, the diverse and multilingual staff, a very committed group of individuals at CLS, Catholic Legal Services, endeavor to keep these families together. At times, they are weary, frustrated, a bit burnt out. They are the Jesus in the gospel, tired, but they never fail to say, suffer the little children to come unto me. And tonight is about helping them help keep families together in our community, our neighbors. It is my distinct honor to turn this over now to a professional, to a person uniquely qualified to lead us into a deeper discussion of the issues and the ways we all can help. Pamela Conde came to the US herself as a child from Peru. As an example of the future potential of children I had mentioned earlier, Pamela has risen to the top of her profession, a celebrated journalist, 6-time Emmy Award winner, co-anchor of the Univision Network's weekday news magazine Primer Impacto, one of the highest rated programs in the United States and in 12 Latin American countries. She has been recognized by People en Español as one of the 25 most powerful Hispanic women. And that is just one among many accolades and honors. Her outstanding work in the field of journalism has contributed richly to our national discourse. Her visibility as a successful Latina serves as an inspiration and a role model for young women of all races and all ethnicities. Her philanthropy, particularly her dedication to children's causes, has enhanced the life of countless young people. Her career and her own life's journey so clearly embody the words of Harry Truman, America was not built on fear. America was built on courage, on imagination, and unbeatable determination to do the job at hand. So I thank you, Pamela, for joining us today to do the job at hand.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you so much. It's going to be a great evening. I'm so excited. And as you mentioned, this is a cause, a human cause that has really touched us on not only on a personal basis, but also on a professional basis. And unfortunately, we've had to report on these children and the separation of families way too many times the last year. So we're trying to do something about it. And this is a great way to do something about it and to join an effort on behalf of Catholic Legal Services. And we have a great program put together for all of you joining us today and for all of you watching this video. We have a great set of guests that will be joining us. And let me go ahead and review a little bit of what is going to be going on in the next hour. So we're going to have the world-renowned celebrity pastry chef, Antonio Bachour, who's also going to be sharing his personal journey as a family of refugees as well, and his successful story as well. We also have Alexandra Codina, who's the award-winning documentary filmmaker, a great friend of mine who really has motivated me to do more about these children and these families, and that's why I'm here tonight as well. We're also going to have Gracia Cusi, who's a supervising attorney for Catholic Legal Services. And I always say this is one of those anonymous heroes behind the scenes who's changing lives and saving these children from being separated. And we're going to go ahead and hear about her mission and the type of work that she's doing along with her team. And we're also going to hear hopefully from Fernando, who is the protagonist. So Ali produced and directed this documentary called Paper Children, or Los Niños de Papel, and she documented the journey of this family that, and I don't want to give anything away, and we'll get to hear about from her, but it really humanized this issue in not only the border, but every time a child has to leave her home country because they fear for their life. So it's going to be really fascinating to hear from her and to hear how not only the documentary changed her, but also how she's doing more about the issue as a whole after the documentary. So why don't we get started with our first guest, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Antonio Bachour to join us now. He's not only going to be sharing his personal story, but also has a great treat for us, and he's going to go ahead and explain what he's going to be sharing with us today. I think he's preparing his tart, a pumpkin tart, and we wanted to do something visual for all of you to enjoy. And it is a great privilege to have him join us tonight because he is world-renowned, and I always tell him I'm a huge fan of his. But he also has a fascinating story, a story of success, but of hard work, and also of great admiration for the sacrifices that his family made in order for him to be where he is right now. Hi, Antonio. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Pamela. How are you?
Good. So why don't we first explain what we're going to be doing on the table, and then we'll go ahead and start asking you questions about your journey and your family and the importance and why these refugee stories and these family separation has really touched your heart in a very, very special way.
Of course. Tonight we want to make a pumpkin tart to celebrate in few weeks Thanksgiving Day. I will explain a little bit about my family. They came from Lebanon, from the refugee to Puerto Rico, and then a little bit about me.
Go ahead, Antonio. Get started.
Okay. Most of the people know, my parents, they are from Lebanon. They immigrate from Lebanon to Brazil and then to Puerto Rico. They moved for many reasons, for the civil war, for the many problems, cultural problems. And then we grew up in a family in Puerto Rico in the 60s, in the 70s. People, they look at my family like immigrants, like they bully us, they say Arabic people, Turkish people, but with everything like that, we grew up with a great value, Catholic family, and then my parent was a great hard worker. He came to Puerto Rico to make our life much better, and he showed us the right way to go ahead being a good person.
And this is your way of helping tonight, Antonio, joining us and showing us this wonderful treat. Why is it important to you to give back to the community, especially to the refugee families, and help those children with these, with Catholic Legal Services?
Yeah, I hope everybody can sponsor and support the Catholic service, legal service, because in my personal experience, I work in many kitchen in New York, in LA, and most of the workers, they are immigrants. A lot of refugees from South America, Central America, Mexico, Ecuador, and they are hard worker people, good people with a good heart. I hope everybody can help these people. They stay in the United States. They came here for one reason, to be a dreamer, to believe in the freedom, in work, with great value, and then we need to support these people.
What was the advice that your father gave you, Antonio, when your family was being bullied, when you felt an anti-immigrant sentiment? What was the advice he gave you so that you guys stay focused on hard work, and on the family values?
The advice my parents and my father always say, that always if you are in this country, you need to work hard. You need to be a great person. You need to show the people that we are one of them. My father always said, you need to be one of them. You need to work hard. You need to be somebody that people respect you, and doing the right things, go to the school, educate, work hard. And that's the story of success of my family.
And it's definitely worked. We're right now, tell us where you are right now, because this is one of my favorite kitchens here in Miami.
Yeah, I'm here in my kitchen in Bachour, Miami. It's my restaurant. We want to make a little bit a tart for Thanksgiving. This is the tart shirt we make with almond tart. We want to have some dulce de leche, of course, something Latin like a twist, Latin twist to our pumpkin tart.
Mm.
We have the dulce de leche on the bottom of the tart. We're gonna have some pumpkin cream that we make with fresh pumpkin.
Now, let me remind everyone that in 2018, Antonio was awarded the Best Pastry Chef Award by the prestigious Best Chefs Awards organization, which is the world's leading culinary award platform. So this is a very special technique that we're watching here.
Yeah, we add the pumpkin cream on top of the dulce de leche, and then we wanna add on the top like a cinnamon cream. We freeze them in the mold, and we put on top, and we wanna decorate with some chocolate decoration that we make in my shop with like a maple leaf in different chocolate shapes. We need to celebrate like we are in a freedom place in our United States, with a country that everybody deserves a place to work and enjoy.
That's right, Antonio. And that's the irony of it. Thanksgiving, which is where most families get together and celebrating with your loved ones. A lot of these children are still separated from their loved ones and their families. So I think in honor of them, that's another reason why we're joining forces with Catholic Legal Services. As many of you know, a lot of these children, and it's a complicated legal system. It's a complicated journey emotionally and also from a legal perspective. And this is why it's important to help organizations like Catholic Legal Services. That looks beautiful and it looks delicious. I'm gonna have to go pass by personally and
yes,
those. But thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your story, for your generosity, for your time, and just for inspiring everyone, right, to help those who need the help, especially during these times. And this is a great cause. So thank you for sharing your art with us tonight.
Thank you. I hope everybody support Catholic Legal Service. Let's support all the immigrants in the United States. We hope everybody enjoy tonight.
Thank you so much, Antonio.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're going to go ahead and continue our program. And joining us in this virtual event is Alexandra Codina. Alexandra Codina, like I mentioned before, is a dear friend, but she's also an award-winning director and producer. And she has made it her personal mission now, to tell the stories and to advocate on behalf of these families and these children. She recently produced and directed Paper Children. And before we get to see a little trailer of that documentary, let's go ahead and welcome Ali. Hi, Ali.
Hi. I think you guys just caught a glimpse of my children.
I know we're all multitasking tonight, but also, very devoted to this cause. I love the idea. Can you tell a little bit about how we put together this concept to help Catholic Legal Services? Why was it important to you to support this cause?
Well, first of all, thank you, Pamela. Thank you, Antonio. This is already so much fun, and it's such a different way, I think, to engage everyone. As someone who not only made a film about this family and the broader, who represents not only this community of so many immigrants in our country who've come here seeking protection, seeking safety. I mean, to meet very basic needs. But also, as you know, I was drawn to making this film as a mother who was very heartbroken when I started hearing these stories about why these children were fleeing Central America and how un-American and how harsh and unforgiving our response was when they arrived on our borders seeking that protection that you were talking about before, Pamela. So for me, tonight is about encouraging all of us to see beyond the politics, to really see the human side of this issue. Of course, it's Prep for Give Miami Day, so we all really want to help raise funds because I've observed firsthand just how fundamental the role of a lawyer is in the life of a child, and also, of course, the life of any immigrant, be them an adult, a family unit, or a young and vulnerable child. But what Catholic Legal Services does is so vital in our community, and at a level where I think most people don't realize because they do their jobs so well, which is providing either pro bono services or, in the case of the kids, it's all pro bono. And then for any other member of the immigrant community who they provide services to, it's all low cost. And as we know, it's a community that's predominantly very low income.
And for you, Catholic Legal Services also has a very special place in your heart because it really is coming full circle for you. And tell us a little bit about your father's story and why, how everything connected now.
Thank you, Pamela, for reminding me of, it's funny because I did originally start reading about these stories, and I had a newborn and I had a toddler, and I couldn't get through this 20-page report for several days. And it was just because the idea of being in that situation, either as a mother or imagining even worse, my child in those situations, was very hard to stomach. But then once I started getting deeper into these stories, it really, as you're saying, reminded me so much of my own father's story. My father arrived in the 60s from Cuba as an unaccompanied child himself through a program called Operation Peter Pan, Pedro Pan. And he went on to embody in many ways the American dream. And it was not an easy process. It's never an easy process to leave home. And we all have, every human story is a complicated story, but I do know that his success is not only rooted in family, and it's rooted in an incredible amount of work and devotion, but also the fact that he had that immediate legal protection, which as a child arriving from Cuba in the 60s, he was uniquely afforded. And that's something that most immigrants, or very few immigrants, especially, these vulnerable children who've been arriving in the last several years in these large numbers from Central America, are not afforded. So the similarities really connected for me, but also the difference from the legal perspective in terms of how my father was embraced versus Fernando and the children in this film.
Because if you think about it now, and we'll see a little bit more when we see the trailer, is good legal representation, any legal representation in that sense, immediately or as soon as they could get it, could make a dramatic difference in the lives of these children and their families. And we'll see, because it varies so much between case and case, children to children, that it really, I think, makes a huge difference for them to be able to have access to this. And also build a relationship, because I was very impressed with the type of relationship that these children develop with their attorneys. We'll get to speak with one of them in a few minutes. But what, from your perspective, you know, while you were documenting this, and let me emphasize that Ali documented this for many years. She followed this family in other cases, not for a year, not for months, but for many, many years. So if you could tell us a little bit about that journey and what impressive, what you learned from that, you know, about those relationships between attorney and their clients.
I think you're right. I think that relationship, not only is it vital for children to receive that protection, and again, we're talking about kids who are fleeing gang violence, they're fleeing some of the most horrific circumstances in this hemisphere, things that a child should never be exposed to. And when I started watching these lawyers, because as you said, I ended up focusing on the one family, and in part I focused on the family because you know, you have different ages, you have a sister, brothers, a younger one, but also, without giving away the ending of the film, they had different outcomes. It's a very subjective system. Mm-hmm. But what really has struck me the most in terms of the lawyers and the work that they do is not only that you need to have a lawyer who's brilliant and very adept at some of the most complicated law in the United States. A lot of people say that immigration law is the equivalent of tax law in terms of its complexity. And then, of course, the last few years, things are changing. There have been 900 changes to the immigration system that implicate, you know, that affect the way the law is practiced.
Yeah, today we had some new developments in that term. So every day you have to be up to date and just aggressively trying to just, I guess, get through the system. Now, why don't we take a look? I don't know, we're ready to play a trailer of Paper Children. This is a trailer of the documentary that documented the journey of Fernando and his family as they arrived in the United States.
Salieron de la casa de mi abuela, de Honduras. Pasamos 12 días viajando para poder llegar aquí a este país. Ese fue el día que los encontramos con mi padre aquí en Estados Unidos.
¿Qué fue lo más difícil de ese camino? Que lo pusieran a ella, ¿verdad?
Era con machete y palo.
Miedo ya no sabía. Mi mamá salía cuando estaban las luces del campo encendidas. Hay unos hombres rodeando la casa y ellos no abren la puerta. Tienen que buscar un abogado.
¿Cómo te sentías durante la entrevista?
Yo estaba nervioso.
You get one more chance before it goes to the judge.
Right.
Miami-Dade County is not a sanctuary community.
¿Qué pasa si me quedo o no me quedo?
Si Dios nos permite, vamos a buscarlo legalmente. Y es el mismo caso porque con mi hermano pasaron todo lo que pasó uno, pasó el otro. Tengo que orarle a Dios. Yo sé que detrás de los niños tenemos manos de él. Anoche no paraba de llorar, ese niño no paraba de llorar.
¿Cómo regresar a Honduras? ¿A morir?
Now, Paper Children is available to stream and watch on YouTube. Ali, and let's emphasize this because I know we discussed this before. Not only is the journey to get here a difficult one, and we see that very, very many times, but what makes, I think, this document so original is that it documents the journey once they're here. And that's when it becomes another challenging obstacle for them because they have to go through the legal system, because they have to live with that stress and the mental stresses that a child should not be dealing with, but that they're constantly living with that fear. Let's talk a little bit about that, but why was it important to start documenting it once they arrived here? And what did you learn about it throughout all those years?
Well, Pamela, when I started learning about the issue, I did a lot of reading. I did a lot of observing in immigration court. I did a lot of talking to advocates. I really was just absorbing as much as I could. And especially in the media, the mainstream media, but frankly, even in film and a lot of news reports that I was reading, everything was about the journey There was a lot in 2014 when I started researching this film, which is 2014, the summer is when the kids in our family arrived. And that summer we had 70,000 children arrive at our border without their parents, specifically fleeing violence in Central America, which is astonishing still to this day to me. And those numbers have continued to be steadily high, much higher than they had ever been. Oh, and now I forgot the question. What was your?
No, what was important to document once they arrived here, that legal journey and that mental stress that they have to live with once they arrive in the United States.
Totally, thank you. And so when I was doing all of this reading and all this research and talking to people, everything was about what happened at the border, the journey, and why people were fleeing. The country conditions were, and rightfully so, but at a certain point we had to start understanding what happens after these children do arrive in the US. I mean, we have right now 500,000 children waiting in limbo, waiting for some kind of for their process to be resolved. And I think that one of the strengths in the film is that you really see the trauma, the layers of trauma. You know, you're seeing children begin to heal and process from in terms of what they experienced and what they witnessed in the past, while also going through, as you were saying, this very challenging process. And right now, Fernando arrived in 2014, and again, without revealing the end of the film, he's been in limbo for 6 years now, and that's not unheard of. So, you know, I think people understanding that it's not just about getting to the US, and I think that it also reflects the reality of another process. You know, for a lot of immigrants, and particularly children, I think when people talk about, people have some of these assumptions that people come here trying to cheat the system. The truth is, every child that I spoke to really didn't have a game plan in terms of how they were going to pursue some kind of protection here. They just felt that getting to the US was safe. And it was just this very visceral feeling that in their country, their government was doing nothing to protect them. There were these armed groups coming after them. And unfortunately, there aren't any countries between Honduras and the US where people can reasonably seek safety. This really, of course, in the case of these children, we also had, their parents were here in the US, which is not uncommon. They were here doing a lot of that day labor work, which our economy depends on, frankly. The parents have done day labor work for many, many years since they arrived here. So
we're going to go ahead and ask Gracia to join us. Now, Gracia Cusi is a supervising attorney with Catholic Legal Services and represents four siblings here. And let me know, how did you two meet, Ali?
So I actually knew Randy, who we saw earlier, the executive director of Catholic Legal Services, who's, by the way, just a very beloved champion and advocate here in the community. So I knew Randy from many years of work in the community. And when I started the project, I met with him. I also met with Cheryl Little, who's the executive director of Americans for Immigrant Justice. And together, these are the two organizations that are really across the board doing the majority of the representation for our immigrant community in South Florida. And specifically when I met with Randy, I have to say he was always so open to introducing me to staff. And we spent many months, in fact, it was almost a year, talking and doing this whole thought exercise of how do I meet clients through lawyers without making anyone feel that they don't have a choice. Or, you know, we always wanted for everyone to understand that this was a completely voluntary process. But I did, even though I was meeting a lot of kids and a lot of immigrants out in the world, there were so many other ways to meet people that I could film. I really wanted to film children who had a competent lawyer, because we then, behind the scenes, had many conversations about what was okay to include in a film without jeopardizing their case, without jeopardizing the safety of everyone involved. So, yeah. And Gracia can tell you more about how she opened up. I mean, it wasn't as if I showed up and it was an easy thing, nor was Gracia very excited about herself being on camera.
I'm still not excited. How are you? Thank you for joining us. I know you're used, by this point, you're used to all the cameras, so you're a pro now.
No, it was definitely a long process. Getting to know Allie and getting to know the family and introducing them. Yeah.
What really surprised me is not only are you legally representing the families, but advocating for them, but I also saw that you became a mentor to them. You were like that one person they trusted that helped them navigate such a complicated process and such an emotional process for them as well as a family. Because as Ali teased a little bit a while ago, it's very subjective and it's a very different outcome for each sibling within the same family. So for you, what does it mean to you to be able to do this for a living, number one, and, you know, provide this service to the community, and also be able to change and save these lives, pretty much?
Yeah, it's a huge privilege to be able to do this kind of work. You know, I went to law school so that I could give back to the community. And in Miami, that work definitely revolves around immigration, you know, representing families and children that have already suffered so much only to face, you know, such an adversarial system here. And it's not a trauma-informed system. And, you know, and our clients, you know, they've been through so much and then they have to meet with the lawyer, open up to us. And these are children. We have to work super hard to build trust, to go through every detail of their story, and then to prepare them to face the government that's trying to deport them. And the government's trying to find, you know, any discrepancy, like, you know, anything that they might say that's inconsistent could be used against them. It's a huge challenge, you know, it's a huge challenge for, you know, to build trust with people that have been through so much and have so much trauma, and to face this adversarial system. And I'd say for the attorneys I work with, you know, we don't talk about it that much outside of work, but we also kind of soak in that secondary trauma. But I think it means a lot to all of us because we all realize that we're so fortunate, that we're so lucky that we can travel, that we can live safely. I mean, beyond just having a safe place to live and not worrying about being killed or not having our parents taken away from us, like we have the freedom to travel and do things that basically that's what we're fighting for in immigration, right? The right to live somewhere where you can, you know, have a free life and be safe and well.
Grisha, maybe you could help us understand in terms of put it in context, right? That how high is the demand? How much needed is the service that Catholic Legal Services provides? Because many people, you know, maybe assume, oh, but they'll get assigned an attorney, or I just want you to help us understand how important it is to help Catholic Legal Services because they do what and because the demand is so high.
Oh, I think you're on mute. You're on mute, Gracia.
I think Gracia's on mute. There we go.
There we go. No, I mean, the need is so tremendous in the community. There are just thousands of children currently that are unrepresented, that are going through, that are in deportation proceedings. And even though immigration law has been turned upside down in the past 4 years, I have to say I'm so proud of that team because we have secured special immigrant juvenile status for almost every child that we've encountered if we've met them at the right time. Because a lot of the immigration benefits for children have to like it needs to happen before.
And that is so important, the timing of it, right? Because if you get assigned a case that has already gone the wrong way or been advised, you know, to whatever it might have been, it makes a huge difference in the future, in the destiny of that child and that family.
It's huge. And so I think that we're constantly pivoting and just being creative about how we can find immigration relief for every single child that we work with. I mean, my entire office is dedicated to helping find immigration relief for every single person that we meet, or to give information, however we can use our resources, because our resources are so limited. And frankly, if we had more resources, and which would be unrestricted funding, you know, I could hire so many more attorneys because we have so many applications from people that want to work for us and do this kind of work. And even if you're an attorney in the community and, you know, you want to help and take a case pro bono, we would be happy to mentor you. So We can share my email address in the chat if anybody'd like to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk further or to place a case with them or give them information because, yeah, we have this tremendous need and we could basically represent all of the children in deportation proceedings if we had the manpower, and the manpower is directly related to the funding.
So let's emphasize one more time. So Miami has among the country's highest number of children in need of legal representation, second only to Dallas in Texas. So you could only imagine the demand and the need for this. We're gonna go ahead and welcome now Fernando. I don't know if he's ready. Vamos ahora a invitar a Fernando. Fernando is, I wanna say, one of the protagonists of this documentary. He's one of the siblings, one of the 4 siblings that Ali shared with and documented. Their journey once, well, their, I guess, legal journey here in the States once they arrive, and also the emotional challenges that his mother, because I really empathize with his mother, for me, I think was another hero because she stayed strong and she had to be balanced with among all her children and deal with all different ages and the way that each of them dealt with the issue at hand. So Fernando, no sé si puedes unirte a la conversación. Vamos a ver si creo que también él está.
Hay que poner el micrófono, Fernando.
Sí, hola, ¿cómo están?
Bueno, Fernando, hola, bienvenido, buenas noches, qué gusto verte
Buenas
otra
noches,
vez.
gracias.
Bueno, estamos aquí conversando y queríamos hacer énfasis, obviamente, en la importancia, y tú puedes ser, obviamente, compartir tu testimonio. ¿Qué tan importante fue tu relación con la abogada? ¿Y por qué es tan importante que estos niños no reciban esa asesoría legal, esa ayuda legal para ti? So I just asked Fernando, how important was his relationship with his attorney and why was it so important for these children to have obtained that legal representation? Cuéntanos, Fernando.
Bueno, para mí la importancia que fue para que ella me explicara cómo es el proceso de lo que uno va a pasar en todo para poder recibir papeles fue algo maravilloso porque uno viene aquí sin saber nada, viene como ciego, pues, sin saber las leyes, sin saber cómo seguir los pasos para tener un buen camino para seguir. Ellos como que lo guían para seguir los pasos bien y tener un buen camino y seguir, para no tener problemas. Porque uno, en mi país, pues todo era diferente a como es aquí ahora. Y ella me guió en todo eso para hacer las leyes, para hacer todo bien, para no tener problemas.
Fernanda said that, the attorney in this case pretty much guided them. It was a completely different system, how things were done in his country in Honduras. And she kind of became like that guide to help them explain and advise him during the process. Fernando, también vemos, por ejemplo, tus hermanos que eran menores que tú y también que pasaron por... A mí me impresiona mucho que niños a esa edad se tienen que enfrentar a un abogado, un juez. Como hermano mayor, ¿cómo fue para ti ver a tus hermanitos? O explícanos, ¿no? ¿Cómo fue el proceso para ellos también y qué fue lo más difícil para ellos? So I asked Fernando, his younger brother, siblings, how was the process for them, having to encounter and go through this legal process at such a young age? Cuéntanos sobre la experiencia de tus hermanitos.
Sí, como por ejemplo, para mí fue algo muy raro, muy diferente a lo nuestro. Y a mí me daba no sé qué, porque mis hermanos a veces se ponían a llorar, o el más pequeño se ponía a llorar y me daba no sé qué verlo así, porque son cosas diferentes que uno vive aquí.
También, ¿no? Porque es mucha presión.
Mucha presión, exacto, porque todo lo del camino y también y venir aquí, porque hay personas con un carácter súper diferente y uno que es un poco tímido para hablar y ver el carácter de otras personas es muy difícil. Y también ver a mis hermanos que también les tocaba pasar eso, fue algo súper difícil ver y me dolía bastante verlos así, porque aparte que veníamos sufriendo, tocaba venir a sufrir un poco más aquí.
Ali, why don't we have you join us again and for you to share a little bit of what it was to spend time with Fernando and his family, and how did you gain their trust, for you to be able to document paper children?
So it was definitely a process. Fernando, perdón, luego te voy a traducir todo lo que voy a hablar de ustedes, pero en inglés.
No, sabe.
Pero me alegro verte.
Ok, gracias.
Me está preguntando Pamela del proceso de ganarme la confianza de ustedes. It was all, initially it was through Karen, Fernando's mother, who you were mentioning earlier. She's, you know, like a good matriarch. Access to that family is completely dependent on gaining Karen's trust and love. She was remarkably open from very early on. In fact, it was interesting because Gracia, when I started speaking to many different attorneys at Catholic Legal Services, and as I mentioned, lawyers at other organizations, but Gracia said, you know, I have this family and I actually think they might be very open and might understand the mission. And frankly, initially, I was also speaking to some other children who had been so heavily targeted by the gangs. I mean, this family was singled out by armed groups, and you'll see in the film, you know, unfortunately, many family members were murdered over the course of making the film. But sadly, I heard much more gruesome stories from a few other children where we couldn't include them in a film because it was just too dangerous. And so part of it too was this family, there was a risk, but it was a balanced risk, right? It was something that we all felt, including the family, comfortable. And we did do a lot in the edit room to remove a lot of personal details. We use a pseudonym whenever we talk about them in the media. But back to your original question, it was time. You know, I was physically allowed into the home very quickly, but that doesn't mean that, you know, that facade came down. And for sure, the person for whom that took the longest emotionally was Fernando, but it wasn't specific, I don't think, just to the camera. I think that some of what you were alluding to before is that it's not only the emotional weight of constantly being in limbo, but being the eldest who was responsible for the well-being and the safety of his younger siblings from such a young age. When Fernando was 12, his mother had to leave Honduras in order to earn enough money to educate her children and mostly feed them, because while they lived at the time in a peaceful village, it was very, very poor. And unfortunately, that was the only out that she could figure out. And it was a very hard decision. You know, we've spoken about it many times, what that was like to leave her kids. But the result was that Fernando, at 12 years old, was in charge of his 5-year-old brother and his 2 other siblings. So I've learned a lot in this process, not only through this family, but in speaking with so many other advocates. And actually, we've begun to do work through the film with the American Psychological Association, which we're going to dig more and more into our impact campaign and talking about the trauma and kind of the holistic needs of these children, not just their legal needs. But when you learn that your mechanism of defense, of survival, is to be stoic, is to be tough, is to not show fear, it's very hard to unlearn that, particularly in a whole new country, in a different language, in this very adversarial process. So going full circle, that lawyer is so fundamental. And I think one thing that I failed to answer earlier when you were asking me, part of what really struck me the most about these different lawyers spending time with them working on the film is how much they themselves, they not only provide so much for these families, but emotionally they take on a lot. And so for me, supporting Catholic Legal Services is not only about supporting the families that they're representing, but supporting these lawyers who are doing some really, really, really tough work. That takes an emotional toll. So
let's talk with Gracia a little bit again, who's our Catholic Legal Service attorney, and let me give some more numbers just to put it in perspective for everyone. So more than 450,000 minors in this country have pending immigration cases. Of the 41,838 children with pending cases in Miami Immigration Court, listen to this, 60%, which is 25,000 children, have no legal representation. So the demand is definitely there. They need the funds so they'll be able to help more children. And Gracia, if you could join me now and and let's highlight a little bit of the, because it's not only, like you say, helping them navigate a legal system and kind of sitting with your, you know, with a regular legal client. This is someone who has already been, these are families who have already emotionally gone through the separation, right? Because most of the times these parents come before, and that was in my case too. My mother came before, and 3 years later, navigating the legal system, we finally were able to reunite here in Miami. But, you know, how do you advise a mother, not only from a legal perspective, but also from a personal, emotional perspective, that the outcomes may be different for all her children?
Well, I mean, we can't make any guarantees, right, with our clients, but what we try to do is we just try to, like, what I find with my clients is that it's so hard to sort of look at just the step ahead of them. You know, they're looking at the big picture of, you know, they want to have their green card, or they want their work permit, or they want the whole problem resolved, because it's a huge problem from start to finish to get their case resolved. And I'm just constantly working with my clients to remind them that we're going to just worry about one step at a time, that we're going to worry about what we're going to do today, or our next hearing in court, or the application that we're going to file, and that we're going to do it to the best of our ability. And that I'm always going to be there with them to, you know, answer their questions and to review everything. And that, you know, I try to meet my clients where they are, you know, both emotionally and with whatever their, you know, levels of education might be, or whatever their experiences are, so that they feel as comfortable as possible, like opening up to me, and feeling like, okay, they're in good hands. But I can never make any guarantees about, you know, what's going to happen, especially the past 4 years. A lot of the, you know, the laws that we were clinging to that could help our clients were undone. So it's been very challenging. And yeah, I mean, it's extremely emotionally draining for everybody. You know, it's emotionally draining for my staff, especially because attorneys, you know, they want to win. They also just want to win in court. And it's such an important, you know, it's not, this is life and death. This isn't fighting over money. This is actually, you know, if people are removed to their countries, which sometimes our clients do end up detained and do end up being deported, I mean, that is literally life and death. So I try not to, I don't want to discourage my clients. I don't want them to feel that they're not going to win their case. But I just try to keep it like one day at a time.
Ali, if you want to ask Fernando to join us again, and maybe you could have him share something without giving obviously away the ending of the film, but maybe something that he also learned about the system, or, you know, because I feel like every time Karen or Fernando, one of the siblings, received a call from Gracia, one of their attorneys, it was like it was going to change, you know, their destiny. So I don't know if you could go ahead and ask Fernando kind of to maybe narrate a little bit of that experience, of those emotions that you documented every time they had that communication or they had that meeting with their attorney to either prep for a hearing, or just while she explained, you know, what was next in the procedure. For me, those were the most nerve-wracking moments of the documentary.
Fernando, me parece que ya estás aprendiendo inglés porque encendiste la cámara cuando Pamela estaba hablando.
Ya, Fernando.
Si quieres quitar encender el micrófono, te vamos a hacer una pregunta.
Ya Fernando, Ali, creo.
Ya, ok. Pues nada, Pamela estaba listando la pregunta en inglés estábamos pensando, ¿cómo para ti eran los momentos de anticipación o siguen siendo los momentos de anticipación en los momentos claves del caso? Por ejemplo, la noche antes de la corte, de un día a la corte, ¿cómo lo pasas?
Súper fatal. Me lo paso súper fatal porque no sé lo que va a pasar y súper nervioso que ni dormir casi puedo. Tal vez me vengo durmiendo a las 4 de la mañana porque me pongo nervioso siempre por eso, porque no sé lo que va a pasar y nunca, a veces voy normal porque nunca me dan una respuesta, siempre sigue y nunca me dan algo para algo que me diga pues que sí me lo van a dar o no me lo van a dar, pero sí lo paso súper mal esa noche, lo paso súper mal.
¿Qué tan importante ha sido, Fernando, para ti tener a Gracia, a los abogados disponibles que te expliquen el proceso, que te ayuden, ¿no? Con todo, durante todo este tiempo y también que han ayudado a tus hermanos? Para muchos niños que no tienen, ¿no? Esa representación y que necesitan ayuda legal, ¿qué ha significado para ti tener acceso, ¿no? A Gracia de los abogados?
Bueno, para mí significa mucho para mí, porque para mí siento que es como una familia que lo apoya en todo a uno. Así lo siento yo, como una familia que siempre lo están apoyando siempre y con una mejor manera.
So I think that's a great way to sum it up. So I just asked Fernando, you know, how important was it for you, or what did it feel like to have access to Gracia and to her team and to the legal representation that him and his siblings had? And he said that he just felt like a family, like having that family support during a very difficult and stressful procedure that continues, you know, as without giving away, I think the documentary, there's a lot of limbo that these children go through, and that's what we're trying to help and do something about tonight. So I don't know if you have some closing words, Ali, before we sign off, or Randy, I don't know if you're still connected, before we end the night. And the importance for everyone to give, especially during Give Miami. Remember, it's givemiami.org/CCLS-Miami, which is Catholic Legal Services. So I'm going to go ahead and open the mic. Gracias, Fernando, por acompañarnos esta noche, por tu testimonio. Y realmente, si Ali puede decir algo, Ali, you could say some closing words, and then Randy, just to finalize. Gracias.
Gracias, Fernando. And I also wanted to share that in addition to Fernando, more of the family was scheduled to attend. They were very excited to attend, but they're all working very hard. And unfortunately, we're working late tonight. But I think part of picking up on what Fernando was saying is very true, that this family, but every client that I've observed at Catholic Legal Services, they really think of this as a very personal, and possibly other than their family, it is the most fundamental relationship that they rely on in their life once they arrive here in the US. So I encourage everyone, it's not just, you know, the circle of people who are here, but if we can really spread the word. Give Miami Day is officially tomorrow, so this is our kickoff. And really what we were hoping to do today was to use this as a catalyst to engage in the conversation about why this organization is worthy. There's so many, you know, causes and issues out there. But, you know, I feel strongly that being in Miami, a community of immigrants, also so many of us rely on the labor of many of these families who are coming here, the parents of many of these kids. And it's another way to give back to all these people who support us in our everyday lives. So I encourage you, and please spread the word. Tomorrow's the big day, but you can begin giving as of right now up until midnight tomorrow. So please help us spread the word. If you get on social media, you are welcome to repost anything. We're all over Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram through Catholic Legal Services. If you look us up, just put Catholic Legal Services Miami. We'll put the link here. And I'm going to pass it on to Randy, but thank you, Pamela. Lovely as always.
Guys. Of course. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am just very moved and touched by all of the work that you guys did in preparing this. This was beautiful. Thank you so much, Ali, and for your help, your friendship throughout the years. I want to leave very much on a note of optimism and hope. I think Miami is a great example of a city of immigrants that has been transformed by all of the talent that has come to us. And we need to remember that image, and we need to sort of redefine what we're dealing with. I really believe that we are not looking at a problem that has to be solved, but as people who need to be helped. And when we start thinking like that, I think the help will come, but we need your resources. I'm very optimistic that we're going to get through this. I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen many waves of people come, and eventually they make it. Eventually they integrate into our system. Eventually they then become the ones we'll reach out to and ask for their help, the next generation to come. So I urge you all to help us persevere, help us make this future possible by providing us with the resources, and you can do that tomorrow. So thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, everyone.